the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Citizens on Election Day sent a very clear signal. They want a council that is more collaborative. They want less divisiveness, and they want more progress.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. A year ago this time, the region watched as a deeply divided Cincinnati City Council argued and grandstanded over how to come to any agreement about a budget for 2011. 1 year, one election, and one $14 million windfall settlement. Later, the adoption of a budget for 2012 went as smoothly as any in recent memory. On election night, after it was clear that Democrats had swept 7 seats on council, I happened to ride down in the elevator with Mayor Mark Mallory. He already had decided to hold the presentation of the manager's 2012 budget proposal until the day after the new council was sworn in. No reason to give the outgoing divided council an opportunity to set the parameters of the debate. To discuss the new dynamics and new budget at Cincinnati City Hall, I'm joined this morning by Wendell Young, a Democrat who served out a partial term and was then elected this past November on his own terms. Mr. Young is Vice Chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, and P.G. Sittenfeld, a first-time council member who ran second on election night. Mr. Sittenfeld is a member of the Budget and Finance Committee and Vice Chair of the Job Growth Committee. Welcome back to Newsmakers for both of you.
Good to be here.
Thank you very much. As we were sort of joking and as I set up, Wendell, this is a little bit different than last year.
It's very different.
Let me ask you though, and I think this is what may be on some people's minds, did serious questions get asked this year, or was it just this $14 million settlement with Convergys just took everybody off the hook and gave everybody a year off not to worry about things?
I really think it's a little bit of both. There are obviously some serious issues that we will take up. But it's a breather budget, no two ways about it. And the $14 million Convergys deal certainly made this the kind of budget that, even though it's not what we call structurally balanced, it is a budget that for the first time, for many people, obviously the first time for me, we're not talking about layoffs. So at this time of year, our employees don't have to be concerned about whether they can have a decent holiday. Citizens in Cincinnati don't have to be concerned about whether we're going to be able to deliver on the services. It's a good budget. I think under the circumstances, the best budget we could deliver. And I think it's a budget that serves the citizens well.
PG, this was your first time through. 2 things. What do you think of the budget? And secondly, what have you learned in 3 weeks with all that experience now under your belt that you did not know before you were elected and sworn in?
Well, I think it's important that people know about this budget. 1, that it is a balanced budget. 2, that it's a budget that does not have any layoffs, including to fire or police. And 3, it's a budget that does not raise taxes. Obviously, the $14 million helped, but I really do think we're setting ourselves up responsibly for the long term. We have a police audit going on right now that we think will generate serious savings, and there are a lot of economic development deals coming down the line. We're going to be adding hundreds of jobs in Madisonville with MedPace and other opportunities. You know, we didn't take into account casino revenue. So, you know, would you rather have a structurally balanced budget than just a balanced budget? Yes, but I really do feel we're setting ourselves up responsibly for the years to come. As far as what I've learned, you know, it was nice. I feel lucky to have taken office this year with this particular council. Of course there was disagreement. No budget is perfect, but we worked, not just 7 Democrats, 9 of us shared our ideas, worked collaboratively, worked together on this, and I think it was a civil process. You know, City Hall, I've sort of said to some folks, can be a little bit of a mirage at times. It's important to spend as much time outside City Hall, talking to people, going about the neighborhoods as we do inside City Hall, but you know, if we could repeat this for, you know, several years to come, I think I'd be a pretty happy city council member.
What, both of you have used the term, and it gets used by pundits all the time, structurally balanced budget. What does that mean as opposed to this budget? What do you mean by structurally balanced?
If you have a excuse me, if you have a structurally balanced budget, you're not doing what we've done. You're not using one-term sources to balance the budget. You're probably not taking from the reserves to balance the budget. What you are doing is, in our particular case, to have a structured budget, we'd be talking about drastic reductions in service. We'd be making certain that the revenue coming in is not overspent by what has to go out. And that would be a structurally balanced budget, but it would not be a budget, in my opinion, that many Cincinnatians would be happy with. We would certainly be talking about reductions in police and fire. Without doubt, we'd be talking about reductions in public services. We'd probably be talking about higher fees. We'd be talking about fees for services we traditionally have not charged people for. You have to be able to grow the revenue and bring it in. So a structurally balanced budget, of course, is desirable, and that's everybody's goal. But at the same time, we have to have a city that people can live in. And there's a thing called quality of life that all of us care about. We've got world-class parks. We enjoy those. Costs money to run that. And if we had a structurally balanced budget, in all likelihood, it would be a severe cut. We like to keep our swimming pools open, and this budget allowed us to do that, a structurally balanced budget.
Which so often that's one that gets taken off the table.
It's a killer.
And then everybody moans about it at the beginning of the summer, and somebody comes forward. It just is sort of it's an act that we go through every year.
Actually, it's an embarrassing act.
It is.
And I am so grateful, and I'll say his name because everybody knows that Stan Chesley has been the guy who has bailed us out time after time on the swimming pool issue. But at the same time, it's just embarrassing that a city like Cincinnati is unable or unwilling to find a way to do basic things that are so very, very important for many people who just don't have the ability to go to the backyard swimming pool or go to the swim club or whatever, can't afford a Y membership.
Yeah. PG, both of you have mentioned that there's this audit going, the police audit going on right now. When do you expect some sort of report back to council? And secondly, what's the buzz? What are you expecting in that audit?
So our new police chief, James Craig, who I think has shown himself to be a tremendous leader so far, and has also shown himself to say he's not afraid to shake things up. Obviously, the first
and doing a PhD in leadership in institutional leadership.
All right, well, there you go. But when he came to town, he said, we need to look at ourselves with fresh eyes. So he initiated this police audit. From what I've understood, we will get the results back either later this month, end of December, or maybe early in the new year, and it will give us recommendations on how can we deploy our forces and use our dollars most efficiently. I think the police chief will take the first stab at, what of these do the police chief, think makes sense. He'll share those results with council, and then hopefully we'll be able to put a lot of that into place and say, we need to be able to show we're using these forces as efficiently as possible.
Do you expect, or are you hoping that this proposal coming out of this audit will actually reduce the amount of money the police department is asking for? So therefore, whether it's the way things are deployed or the size or however this happens, it's actually going to reduce the cost of police?
I think there will absolutely be savings, and I defer to the expertise of our police chief when it comes to police matters. But I think that was.
But that's what your expectation is.
I think that was part of the expectation, and he's been pretty vocal in saying, I think we might be a little bit administratively top-heavy. What we owe citizens, what we owe taxpayers, is street strength on the ground, and that's going to be my first priority. So I think he's been pretty clear about that.
Wendell, you're a retired police officer. What's your expectation?
Actually, my expectations are very much the same as Mr. Sittenfeld. It's obvious to me, and it's been obvious for a long time, the police department is top-heavy. But there's also the issue of deployment. I mean, we appear to have able-bodied officers in police districts answering telephones. I think he's going to take a look at something like that. In districts, you sometimes have very few people who are actually on the street doing police work. I think he's going to take a look at that. That's what we're talking about when we look at redeployment of personnel. I think he's going to take a look at specialized units and figure out which ones we really have to have, which ones can be replaced or reduced. He's obviously going to look at how we're spending money, how we're utilizing equipment, all of those things. But I think at the end of the day, we're both looking for what a reduction in what it costs to run that police department and more efficient use of resources.
And Dan, you're the historian, but it's my understanding this is the first audit of the department in literally decades, and I think that this can set a precedent for looking at a lot of our departments with fresh eyes and preserving our excellent city workforce, but saying how can we do business better?
In fact, that's where I was going to go next. Is there a parallel audit being done anyplace else? For example, another safety force, the fire department. Is a parallel audit being done there?
I'm not aware of a parallel audit being done, but I am aware that, I keep wanting to say new fire chief, but I am aware that the fire chief has certainly taken a very hard look at how the fire department functions. He is making changes. He's made some recent changes in how they get trained and what it costs to do that. There'll be other things he's doing, but whether he's actually done a full-blown audit the way the police department is doing, I don't think so, but I believe that's next.
There is an audit from the state auditor's office going on in the public services department. One thing that was incorporated into this year's budget was a new garbage pickup route. It's called Route Smart. They're expecting to save $1 million. So I think this council and the administration is focused on how can we do business and how can we provide these services with maximum efficiency and high quality.
PG, you made a reference to, and maybe, I don't know, one of you made a reference to job growth and MedPace in Madisonville, and you're on the job growth committee.
Right.
First off, what's happening in Madisonville? What's MedPace? And secondly, what's the strategy here?
Well, I think the large strategy moving forward is, we need to grow our tax base by growing the pie, by growing the amount of jobs here. And obviously, Chiquita leaving got a lot of attention, but I immediately said, this does not reflect, the degree to which Cincinnati is open for business. This is still a great place to do business. And I think, a number of things we're going to see. We've got Omnicare coming across the river. Obviously, we want to, compete with other regions, not within our own region.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Quite as much, but, make sure we're keeping a competitive tax structure and really, I think, highlighting our strengths. This is the consumer marketing capital of the world, and really be aggressive and assertive in going out and bringing other businesses in here, working with our higher ed institutions so that we have a qualified workforce to do that. And I think we're going to continue to see job growth moving forward.
Yeah. And MedPace itself, what is that, and what
MedPace
kind of jobs are we talking about?
MedPace is actually located in Madisonville. A lot of people, if you're down there near Red Bank in Madison, you've probably seen it, that big new building up there on the hill. But they're a medical research outfit, and a lot of good jobs are going to be there.
So these are high quality jobs, high paying jobs, so high tax jobs.
I believe that the majority of them fit that bill. I mean, I really don't know.
Because that's what we lost with Chiquita.
But that's what we lost with them.
That's no doubt about that.
But we're looking at about 1,000 more jobs coming in over there. So, we have high hopes for that. That's a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And it's also a lot of opportunity for the city, because there will be people, no doubt, who come there who don't already live here. So they'll be buying homes here. They'll be staying here.
In that same area, the post office, I mean, we're sort of in suspension here about when this decision is going to come. Very honestly, it doesn't look good for the future of this particular facility. Is there really anything the city council can do about this?
I don't believe that there's anything city council can do in terms of forcing the government to keep it here. But we do have a bully pulpit, and we are able to make the necessary noise and attract attention to the issue. The reality for us is I won't say very simple, it's very important. We're looking at more than 2,000 jobs in that facility. But we're also looking at the loss of revenue and the loss of jobs and perhaps the loss of people because of the services that facility needs. So those service jobs will also be gone. The inconvenience to the citizen absolutely cannot be overlooked if we can believe what we've been told, that a first-class letter mailed in Cincinnati to a Cincinnati address, if we lose this facility, can take as long as 7 days to get delivered. And that's not even talking about people who depend on them for their retirement checks and so forth. So the spillover is huge, but I do believe that there's an opportunity here. Okay. I know you want to get to something else, but I just want to say one thing. We've been told that if a stamp costs 63 cents,
right,
and if they can revise their pension plan, which is overfunded, we'd be able to keep that facility.
Okay, I'm out of time. So thank you. Stay tuned. After the break, I'll be joined by the National President and CEO of Goodwill Industries. The latest trend in the not-for-profit world is the creation of social venture enterprises, businesses that generate a profit for the agency and at the same time carry out larger social goals, like job training. Guess what? The idea isn't new. Ohio Valley Goodwill Industries has been a social venture enterprise for 95 years. In the process of taking used clothing and other goods on one end and selling them through a network of thrift shops on the other end, Goodwill uses the process to do job training for people who do not easily fit into the mainstream workforce. Welcome back. To mark the 95th anniversary of the local affiliate of the Goodwill Industries, Jim Gibbons, the national president and CEO, has come to Cincinnati. Originally from Indiana, Mr. Gibbons started his career at AT&T right here in Cincinnati. He has earned his bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from Purdue University and is the first blind person to graduate with a master's degree in business administration from Harvard University. Jim, welcome back to Cincinnati. It's good to have you here.
It's great to be back in Cincinnati.
And we're taping on Friday morning, and you were able to come yesterday and visit some Goodwill facilities and some of the people. And what is it that you encountered there? What was your experience when you got to those facilities?
Well, you mentioned it, the notion of social enterprise and social entrepreneurialism, and even though it's got the buzz of today, it's a very rich and glorious past here in Cincinnati, and you see it in every team member, their passion and their ability to innovate. And I always like to think that innovation isn't the next iPhone, but the next good idea to allow us to serve more people. And they do it here in Cincinnati in a role model fashion for the rest of the country and the world.
So this particular chapter is celebrating its 95th anniversary, but Goodwill goes back to about 1902. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, as a total movement, and how was it formed, and sort of what was its original vision?
Well, we think of ourselves as kind of the original social enterprise. We were founded by a Methodist minister, Reverend Edgar Helms, in 1902 in Boston, and originally he was focused on serving immigrants who really had difficulty finding a job and working through the language barriers and other barriers, but quickly found out that in collecting used goods, people didn't want to hand out, but they wanted to hand up. They started repairing those products, selling those products, and the first Goodwill was born. And then that movement moved from town to town and landed here in 1916, and history has been written and has been lived, and a bright future we see going forward.
So if we look at the Goodwill Industries movement across the country, what size, how many people are employed, how many people do you train when you're looking at it as a national phenomenon?
When you look across the broader Goodwill enterprise, we have 98,000 employees. Growing 15,000 employees in the last 3 years. So even in this tough economy, we continue to be an economic engine for the communities that we're a part of. We serve over 2.4 million people annually. We have relationships with 100,000 employers and place 170,000 people into community jobs throughout the country. So we really work hard to be a solution for the community and be a part of the community in a very meaningful and impactful way.
Now, you've been in this position as president and CEO for about 3.5 years.
Correct.
So a lot of that growth has come under your direction. Is this part of your vision? What is it that you bring to the organization?
Well, I like to think that I have a certain vision and an ability to offer leadership. But the way that I think the best thing I can do as a leader from a broader Goodwill perspective is foster that leadership and entrepreneurialism throughout the network. We are an on-the-ground organization, and each Goodwill morphs to the needs of their particular community. So, for example, the Goodwill here in the greater Cincinnati area many years ago really saw a need for veterans and was a pioneer in veterans programs that is, as you know, today is really a very important issue, and practices that they started here in Cincinnati have been modeled and repeated throughout the country.
In fact, just maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, we did a special segment on this show about the new Veterans Court that exists here in Cincinnati, helping veterans who fall into legal problems stay out of the penal system, get training, and get back into productive parts of life. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, reading about Goodwill, one group that you serve are people who may be having a hard time finding a job because they've got a criminal record and need some job experience so they can get back into the mainstream.
Yeah, we serve a wide range of populations, whether it's the young woman with single mom with 3 kids without a high school education, or the young man who found himself on the wrong side of the law and is trying to right that. And you'll see more and more people with a record, and we view it as part of our mission to really work to educate and find the employers who are willing to give a person a second chance, and we've had great success.
Well, you were mentioning it, I think you said 107,000 employers that you have relationships
to? Over 100,000 across the country.
Okay, and that relationship means it's not just calling them up for a single job and saying we've got somebody you might be able to place in a job. You're developing an ongoing relationship with those firms, is that right?
It's about creating a value proposition for the employer, recognizing that in the way we think about it, they're a customer and we're a talent provider. And we recognize what their needs are and then connect the dots between the individual and the employer. And that solutions mindset is, I think, what differentiates Goodwill.
One of the things I want to obviously take note of here is that you're blind yourself. Do you think it's important that someone with a disability is heading up an organization like Goodwill?
Sometimes it's helpful, but we have extraordinary leaders throughout Goodwill who don't have a disability, but have an extraordinary passion and a belief in the human potential that I think is just as powerful. But I think the advantage to some degree is my ability to connect and recognize that job search process, can have some challenges, and how do we overcome those challenges as a team, as a broader organization, and as individuals.
You have this amazing, and we gave a quick overview of your background in business. Before you came to Goodwill, you've got these degrees from Purdue and Harvard, 2 pretty good schools. And what is it in your own life, or maybe who was it, that made those sorts of things, that sort of success, mainstreaming possible?
My parents. My parents were awesome. I have an older sister who's blind. I always joke around that they made all their mistakes on raising a young blind child on her, and they didn't. She's awesome. But they had high expectations of me. They held me accountable to my chores, my homework, and to being respectful to people. And then they took those high expectations and surrounded them with the tools and the support and the love that was necessary for me to find success. And actually those are the characteristics of Goodwill. We have high expectations of the people that we serve and work with, and then we surround those expectations with the tools, the support, and indeed the love that allow a person to really be empowered and fulfilled and successful.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out that I noticed in a story about you that when you lived in Cincinnati back in the 80s, right?
Okay.
That
I'm waiting.
Cincinnati Association for the Blind and Visually
yeah.
Impaired, and they just celebrated their 100th anniversary in 2012, and I was fortunate enough to be the speaker at their annual dinner, and a great organization as well.
Yeah, a great organization with a legacy of fantastic leaders, and a social enterprise as well that has the ability to put people who are blind to work in meaningful employment and using a business model to be successful with that.
We're out of time, but I really want to Thank you for coming to Cincinnati to help the local chapter celebrate its 95th at the luncheon this afternoon, and also hope you continue to come back and see us again. And good luck in this enterprise that you're about and all the work that you do. And thank you for all the work that you do.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay. And if you want to find out more about local Goodwill, go to www.cincinnatigoodwill.org or shop online at www.shopgoodwill.com. I didn't know you could shop online at Goodwill. That's new to me.
No, Shop Goodwill's a great tool.
They're another resource. You and Amazon. Thank you for making Local 12 Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next Sunday on Christmas morning for a very special program featuring voices from across the religious spectrum. Have a good week.